According to a study by Elliot Hedman, the frustration of learning Monopoly, the emotional tension of entering a new game encounter, you are most excited about a board game when you first open the box, and after that comes learning the rules, at which point your excitement goes boom. This is a long-standing belief held industry-wide from fans to makers. We accept that learning rules is the biggest barrier for getting into tabletop, and I own not one, but 2 Calyxes filled with board games, which occupy a room by themselves, plus another shelf in my office. So there must be something to that opening the box thing, right? Publishers are especially aware of this, and they spend a lot of time innovating the rulebook, hacking it to make it more digestible, shorter, more interactive, spend as little time reading so you can get to the fun part. I first heard about this study on a podcast, but I couldn't remember who said it or which podcast, so I wanted to make sure that I recalled it accurately and that this was a good study. First, I asked people on Boucsein if they remembered it as well, and some quickly pointed out that they heard this from Quentin Smith from some board game channel called Shut Up and Sit Down. This can't be where I heard it because I don't even know who that is. Then Manuel Correa, who is a board game designer, pointed out that there's also a speech by Rob Davio from 2013 at NYU Game Center, where he also mentions this study in relation to Risk Legacy.
There was a study that I learned at Hasbro through MIT that the most exciting part of playing a board game is opening the box. They did skin conductivity. That's when people were the most excited. Then they had to read the rules, and that's where fun went to die. And then they kind of took their first couple turns, and it was exciting. And then depending how good the game was, they got more and more excited, but never as excited as they were when the box was open.
So that's pretty much in line with what I remember. But just in case, I emailed Rob and asked him if he could recall this study. So thanks to Rob Davio, I can unleash this thing onto you. The 8-page paper opens up by confidently stating, 1. We will add this chapter heading. Narrator voice, they did not add this chapter heading. Also, because I am a child, I have to read the sentence out to you out loud. As a proof of concept, Mother's arousal was measured while they played a new board game. Mother, may I? Before we all get our knickers in a twist, I have to somewhat regrettably tell you that when they say arousal, they mean that as a technical term. The premise of the study is to attach a device to people's skin that measures how much it sweats, to record people's emotional response that would otherwise go unnoticed just from body language. Unlike studies that came before, in 2011, they were also able to do this in a natural environment as opposed to a lab, so they got 4 families, attached the device to the mothers as they sat their kids down in the living room for a family game night. One of the mothers responded to her child's desire to play Risk with what was basically, it's too complicated, I ain't doing that, let's play Aggravation instead. It's worth noting here that the study was tailor-made for Hasbro, so each mother was handed a bag of 6 to 10 Hasbro board games where the family was not familiar with any of the options to simulate an environment where everyone is new to a game. And so here in this graph we see the results. The excitement does indeed reach a peak when a new game is opened and then tanks afterwards, especially after 10 minutes of rules reading. But unlike Rob says in his speech, the excitement does go up again and reaches even a slightly higher peak where it then persists for the first 3 rounds and then begins to plummet again. Here is where I have to insert some opinion. It plummets because the family in question realized that they're playing a board game made by Hasbro. Actually, scratch that. They're playing a board game called Aggravation, which is presumably the precise emotion that the arousal meter would pick up, and yet the needle keeps dropping. Whilst we're here, I have to also note that the study never claims to measure excitement, it measures arousal. And it also notes that arousal can be either positive or negative, and there's no way to differentiate between the two without other context clues such as observable behavior, which is why they interview the participants afterwards. So when this graph spikes, it could be excitement, but it could also be anxiety. There's just no way to confidently tell. 2 of the participants have no graphs, and the study does not elaborate on why their data is not presented. There is literally no way of telling what they contributed and how it impacted the findings. And the last participant, Mary, We have a graph showing her arousal whilst playing with her kid Jacob, and I cannot believe I have to issue a content warning for a study that measures how families play Hasbro games. But if you're sensitive to parents being cruel to their children, maybe skip to this timestamp. Example 2. The mother puts a piece in the game slot. 1. Mary. Connect 4. 2. Jacob. It's not connect 4. 3. Jacob begins laughing. 4. Mary. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 together. No. Jacob, no, no. You're unfair. Jacob, you are unfair. No, 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 no. No, Jacob, you are unfair. Because just now you had something coming across, so. 5. At the end of this discourse, Mary dumps the pieces of the game across the floor. When the study says arousal, it can mean something like that. In the interview, Mary explained that winning was important to her. She wants to show Jacob that she is smarter than him. In addition, she explained how she felt that Jacob was cheating throughout the whole time and she didn't trust him. She only spent 16 seconds in total reading the directions, so she did not have clear directions on what constitutes a win. You have to understand how apocryphal this study is in the board game sphere. It's not just the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast that I heard it on. Publishers and designers mention it all the time, either because they heard about the study themselves or they follow the opinion of someone who assumes the findings of this study to be true. We must make the rulebook shorter. I mean, here's a tip for you. Why not remove the rulebook altogether? Cut that learning time down to 0. But now that I found this study, it turns out that it was based on findings from 4 participants. Data from half aren't even listed. One of them literally table flipped in front of their child. The people played Connect 4, Aggravation, and 2 mystery Hasbro board games. And I'm not poo-pooing Hasbro. I mean, I am, but can we agree that the study measures a very different potential buyer? Can we really take the response of 4 people who are looking for a family activity to do with their kids as a blanket study and apply the results to a hobby-oriented audience? I think there's definitely some valuable data to be extracted from this. The study concludes by stating that this will help Hasbro develop games that encourage less arousal, in turn making family game night a more placid, manageable experience. I hope it works out for them with Check's Notes, Monopoly Cheaters Edition. Wait a minute, encourage less arousal? Wasn't the point of the entire thing to increase it? No, the point of it was to keep it at a very mundane level. Actually, that's still a lie. The point of the study is to show possible applications of this new wonder technology that's used within the study. More than ever, industry focuses on improving the experience of their products and services. A major component of this experience is the emotional experience. This study provides a small example where measuring the emotional response can help inspire future product design. Additionally, this research exemplifies the usefulness of skin conductance within observational studies to help researchers better understand the invisible side of emotions. So what is this wonder technology? Well, it's a device that measures your EDA, or electrodermal activity. EDA monitoring is so old that Carl Jung was writing about it in 1906, and those of you who watched the Louis Theroux documentary or two might also recognize another device that does this, that I will not name because the YouTube algorithm will think this video is then about something else. But I will tell you that it sounds a bit like a niche meter and is used by an organization that sounds a bit like the Blurch of crimeantology. I don't want to paint a picture that makes out EDA meters to be useless tech. They have a lot of legitimate medical purposes. I just thought that tidbit was funny, but also perfectly illustrates that most tech isn't inherently somehow good or evil. It's how you use it. As part of his PhD, Hedman and others worked on a new type of EDA meter at MIT, one that's wearable on your wrist. And excuse some conjecture on my part, but I assume that any tech you work on at MIT must then be proven to have some sort of a commercial purpose. So then, this study, commissioned by Hasbro, is Hedman's early attempt to demonstrate a viable commercial application for his product. Later, Elliot Hedman moved up in the world and became the CEO of Empath, I see what they did there, a startup that makes a device called the Moxo that can measure consumer emotional responses. The company's website features this entirely normal illustration to explain what their aim is. The MOXO is a EDA meter, a GoPro strapped to a subject's head that films their eyeballs, and post-session interviews. And the combination of all three is more like a product that's packaged and sold to companies like Lego, Hasbro, and terrifyingly, Google, hello masters, who want to know how children feel when they interact with whatever it is they sell. And if you're feeling like I'm about to dismantle the whole thing H-Bomber style, I'm really not. I frankly don't know anything about EDA meters. I just read some papers, did some research, not enough to formulate any kind of informed conclusion. I couldn't tell you whether what Empath is doing is legitimate science or not. Also, Hedman seems especially interested in helping children, especially neurodivergent children. It's clearly a big motivator for him, and I think it's important to note that. But I can tell you that this early study he did for Hasbro is, in my opinion, incredibly clumsy, and none of its findings should be taken seriously. The other thing I can tell you about EDA meters is that they are simply not reliable. According to Wikipedia, there are a bunch of different factors that could lead to inconsistent results, such as temperature, humidity, hydration, medication, and so on. Also, sweat glands are distributed unevenly across the body, and different sweat glands are activated by different regions of the brain. But Wikipedia isn't a reliable source of information. No, but the citation on Wikipedia for this particular section links to a paper by Rosalind W. Picard, no relation, who happens to be the co-inventor of the MOXO. So I think for the purposes of this video, is a perfectly reliable source. In short, skin conductance by itself is not accurate, which is why they use the eyeball GoPro and the interviews as well. In his PhD thesis paper, Thick Psychophysiology for Empathic Design, Hedman recalls the study we've been looking at. Also, if you're looking for a new tongue twister, try saying PhD thesis paper, Thick Psychophysiology. I took about 30 takes on this one sentence alone. For the next study, Hasbro wanted to understand people's emotional experience playing a board game. I planned on providing children Clue and then watching the families try to teach the game. As I began to design this research project, I was taking multiple ethnography classes. One of my professors, Dr. Graham Jones, challenged this approach. How does the child's perspective change when told, here's a game, now play it? The child is no longer playing a game, but rather performing a task for his parents and an MIT researcher. Taking his advice, I carried a large duffel bag packed with 12 different board games and let children choose any game they wanted. With this switch, children were able to dictate the course of play, much like a child asking to play a game after dinner. This alteration helped me discover a key insight. The most exciting part of a board game is opening the game up, like unwrapping a present during the holidays. And right after opening the box, the most boring section occurs, reading the instructions, draining children's enthusiasm. I mean, help me understand this. According to this paper, the children were able to choose the games, even though the previous study states that in at least one case, it was the mother who chose the game. The 6 to 10 board games became 12 board games, and a mother tossing Connect 4 across the floor became, with this switch, the children were able to dictate the course of play. Not to mention the original study implicitly stating, additionally, arousal can be both negative and positive. Whether tension is perceived as good or bad cannot be concluded from physiological arousal alone. I don't know, I feel like I'm with Graham Jones on this one, whoever he is. Sure, you are measuring people's sweat glands in a natural environment and you are interviewing them afterwards, but you still strapped an EDA meter to their wrists and they're still performing for you. You have literally filmed them play a board game. And let me tell you, as someone who's also been filmed playing a board game many a times, you are not yourself in that environment. Hedman acknowledges this in his thesis. I remember starting out measuring the skin conductance of children with sensory challenges during therapy and telling my professors the child is clearly stressed based on her skin conductance. Dr. Picard had to continuously remind me that I did not know it was stress based on skin conductance alone. I hope that others who conduct thick psychophysiology can learn from my initial mistakes and be always questioning the meaning of physiological changes, taking a skeptical stance from the beginning. Elliot is incredibly good at knowing his audience. His thesis is aimed at professors and me, apparently. No one at Google is going to read this, so he acknowledges that skin conductance is not a reliable indicator. In media interviews, however, the slant is a bit more hype-driven. While at MIT, Hedman tested the sensor on children with autism enrolled in occupational therapy. One boy was climbing a rock wall and looked calm, but his stress spikes registered off the charts. I thought, the sensor has to be broken. There's no way that kid is scared, Hedman says. Coming off the wall, the boy told the teacher he was bored, but the sensor data indicated otherwise. That's when the teacher had a light bulb moment. Hedman says, the boy said he was bored to compensate for being overwhelmed. That was a really powerful moment for me. I knew there is so much we can do if we understand emotions better. This interview came after his thesis, so he must have forgotten to take that skeptical stance. It is clear to me that at the time Hedman was doing the Hasbro study, he simply did not know where he was going with it. He states that he was doing it to help Hasbro reduce arousal, but Hasbro doesn't want to reduce arousal, which we know because they took this study and they made Risk Legacy, which is why later in the thesis he reframes it and states that it helped him discover the most exciting part of board games. What I want you to get from this is that this entire industry picks up trends by overhearing wisdom passed down from other publishers in the oral tradition, campfire tales in convention hotel lobbies. Whether that wisdom is accurate or even applicable to what they're doing doesn't really matter. It worked for them, it'll work for me too. Board game publishers are in an arms race to make the rulebook more digestible, as a consequence of which there's publishers like Allplay who make rulebooks so short I sometimes don't understand how to play what is effectively a 30-minute game. Others include laborious learn-to-play tutorials that are interactive in the hopes of making learning more engaging, but what it results in is a bunch of people sitting at a table and reading. Games like Ascendancy force you to follow this tutorial as the only method of learning and crucially rob me of the one thing that keeps me coming back to the table: play. Because in these step-by-step tutorials, there is no play. There's just following text for hours on end, an art house instruction manual installation, dredged from Dante's Nine Hells, dripping with the flesh and viscera of rulebooks past, animated by a necromancer. It's not all bad. Rob Daviau was inspired to make Risk Legacy, which in turn gave us Pandemic Legacy, which in turn gave us Gloomhaven, which gave me hundreds of hours of arousal. Empath isn't Hedman's only project. He also works on Wonder.io, where he used his research to develop interactive children's books to assist with reading skills. And they seem really nice and, at least for now, are entirely free and accessible through a web browser. I think this is really cool. I have no idea how effective these books are at helping kids read, very according to Hedman, but this can only be a good thing. I just never liked the idea of this opening the box factoid. It didn't ring true, and discovering where it came from made me even more skeptical. This is what I believe instead. Opening the box is not when you are most excited about a board game. That is just a validating release of your consumerist tendencies. The most excited you are about a board game is when you actually play it. I don't have a paper to prove this, I just know it. And maybe reading rulebooks isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but when you try to hack it with interactivity, you make rulebooks incomprehensible, which plummets my mother's arousal into the Mariana Trench. Board game enjoyers are not some sort of an amalgamous blob, and you can't take a study that surveyed 4 families and apply whatever wisdom was extracted from it unilaterally. In an interview with MedicalOutsourcing.com, Hedman explains how his research revealed that people think that brushing teeth is boring, and with this information, toothbrush-making companies are developing new products. I guess we can look forward to toothbrushes that will play a fanfare every 20 seconds and serve us ads selected by an algorithm. I don't want that. I just want a toothbrush that brushes my teeth well. I want a rulebook that teaches me the rules. So publishers, next time you're writing a rulebook, please don't try to conjure some new methodology. Just give me a rulebook that has all of the rules in a format where I can read them from start to finish. Congratulations, you came here for a board game review and you've just finished watching a video on skin conductivity, which must mean that you really like us. Well, if you do, I have 2 things I need to tell you. One, a lot of the work on this video was actually not done by me, but by Elaine. She did a lot of the research. I was just the buffoon with a meat cleaver. But if you like Meatcliff buffoonery or board game reviews or research, then there's more coming as long as people like yourselves support us on a website called Patreon. Patreon.com/NoPunIncluded, where you go to give us a little bit of money every month because we're entirely independent. We don't have any publisher support, nor do we have any kind of sponsorships. So if you'd like us to keep going, please donate some money. A little bit every month really, really helps. And we'll see you soon, hopefully next time with an actual board game review.